After the emergency was proclaimed on the 3rd of November, things have been happening very fast. Of course, the government took a lot of actions that were very directly violative of human rights. Almost 7,000 lawyers, according to our estimate, were arrested. Many of them were treated very badly while they were in police custody or in prisons. Human rights activists were arrested, the judges were deposed. Almost 60 judges from the superior courts were sent home because they refused to take an oath under the provisional constitutional order that Musharraf had imposed after putting the constitution under suspension. So a lot of things have been happening which will have very long-term and damaging effects for Pakistan's institutions. A lot of laws have been promulgated which are now given permanent kind of cover. So even when the emergency has been lifted and the constitution is restored, these laws which restrict freedom of the press, laws that restrict the professional rights of lawyers, it restricts the judicial review and scrutiny of governmental actions during emergency, these will remain. So we do feel that elections that have been announced are in many ways don't have any credibility and will not produce the kind of results that are absolutely necessary to put Pakistan on the track towards democracy. So I do feel that the situation right now doesn't seem to be very reassuring. I think that all governments in the world, United States, should also be very supportive of demands that are being made in Pakistan by the civil society for the restoration of the constitution and for the restoration of the judiciary to the position that they were held on the 2nd of November. This would be an absolute precondition for any actions that or measures that will be adopted and which Musharraf claims are necessary for progress in democracy. I don't think that without these two very essential preconditions, coupled with, of course, the freedom of the media, that there will be any confidence in the elections at all. A process that has already been flawed because they do believe that the elections have already been rigged and that Musharraf has a plan of rigging the elections even further. So I do believe that we are in for a long period where the civil society will have to keep struggling for the restoration of the rule of law, the restoration of the judiciary and the freedom of expression and mostly the freedom of assembly. It was for the first time that earlier this year that the judiciary had decided to take up certain cases in order to play a role in the protection and promotion of human rights and the rule of law, and were trying to enforce the rule of law, especially with regard to certain allegations of corruption against the government and petitions that were placed before them regarding these issues. Also, with regard to the very serious violations that the government has committed in terms of their conduct on arbitrary killings and disappearances. And I think it was for the first time that Pakistanis felt that the judiciary is acting according to their conscience and is able to take decisions that are not dictated by the military establishment in Pakistan. This movement has had the unique effect of, first of all, communicating to the common person in Pakistan why notions of independent judiciary are very close to the issues that they confront in their everyday life. It is also one of the movements that is very well supported by the people in Pakistan. So, and has given the urge amongst the people to hold the executive accountable. Of course, Musharraf's contribution there cannot be denied, although it was this started as a commercial enterprise on his part, and he had no sense of promoting the freedom of expression and freedom of press. But the reality is that these channels were opened, and once they started exercising the freedom of the press and the freedom of expression and use these channels to promote the right to know of the people, the government couldn't tolerate it. And one after the other, and this is not only after the emergency, very soon after these channels began broadcasting programs that on current affairs, on political issues, that gradually one restriction after the other was imposed. A regulatory authority was created, and this regulatory authority has made very controversial decisions with regard to what can be broadcast in Pakistan and what cannot. The electronic media has been warned that they would be looking at 3 years imprisonment and $10 million rupees fine if they take public calls from the public in general, live calls on television for public comment. So which means obviously that there is an attempt not only to intimidate the press, but also to prevent any kind of public opinion emerging. It is very easy to sit outside Pakistan and feel comfortable about what is happening, but people like us who have to deal with the situation and experience the problems that come to confront us do find it very difficult when we don't get that kind of wholehearted support from the outside. I think after the emergency, I do see that support strengthening outside of Pakistan, but my message to the people who are outside of Pakistan is to keep a very vigilant eye on how Pakistan's civil society reacts to the different measures that are adopted by a government that is not very well known for its human rights records. It is important for them to do that because the civil society may have different views on certain things, but this time you look at the civil society and you look at the human rights organizations, the academics, the lawyers, the journalists, the students, even professional classes like the doctors. So all these groups now are looking at the situation and have come to a consensus about certain very important steps that need to be taken and reversed after the emergency. And I think it's a very convincing case now about Pakistan that the joint demands of the civil society, on which there is consensus and which are being made with unanimity, should also be demands that people outside should be very, very strictly and very clearly making, especially with regard to the restoration of the judiciary in Pakistan. And this is not just because we are enamored of the judiciary, but because we feel that this is the last time that we can preserve a good value of the independence of the judiciary. If we fail these judges who showed courage in not taking oath under the provisional constitutional order and not becoming a part of the demolition of democracy and rule of law in Pakistan, we can't abandon them. We have to show that this kind of courage deserves the support of the nation.